A new Reuters Ipsos poll finds a majority of Republicans still believe Donald Trump won the 2020 election. 53% believe Trump is, quote, the true president. 56% of Republicans say the election was the result of illegal voting or rigging, and 61% believe the election was stolen from the former president. That, as a Republican-led hand recount of ballots cast in Arizona's Maricopa County resumed yesterday after a week-long hiatus caused by high school graduations in the arena where the so-called audit is taking place. The Associated Press reports more tables and counters were added this week, but the operation has still not reached its full capacity, and the recount is taking far longer than expected. It was supposed to be completed by May 14th. And in Georgia, Fulton County will undergo another audit of 2020 absentee ballots following claims of fraud. A ruling by a Georgia judge last week allows for the ballots to be unsealed and reviewed by a group of electors claiming Fulton County election workers counted fraudulent ballots. The review will be done under the guidance and supervision of a special master appointed by the court. Joining us now, former Georgia House of Representatives Minority Leader Stacey Abrams. She is the founder of the voting rights advocacy organization Fair Fight and author of the new novel, While Justice Sleeps. And we'll get to that in just a moment, Stacey. You know, while you're saving democracy, you're writing books. You're pretty amazing. It's great to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
What do you make of these so-called audits still happening and recounts in Arizona and Georgia?
These are schemes designed to perpetuate not only the big lie, but more concerning to me, it's to perpetuate the insurrection. We have to remember that what caused that behavior on January 6th was an attempt to rewrite history and to sublimate the notion that all voters should have the right to be heard, that the election administration that occurred was done correctly, and that the outcome of the election was correct. And instead of seeing us move on as a nation, what we are watching instead is this concerted attack on our right to vote by Heritage Action, by the Republican National Committee, and unfortunately by elected Republican officials who know better but refuse to do better.
Stacey, it's Willie Geist. As you know very well, the votes from the 2020 election in the state of Georgia have been counted not once, not twice, but 3 times. So my question to you is, why do groups of conspiracy theorists, and that's what they are, have access to voting machines in Arizona or absentee ballots in Georgia? What is happening at the state level in the legislature and the governor's mansions that's allowing conspiracy theories access to our voting systems?
Sadly, we are seeing a conflation of conspiracy theory and power hunger. We are watching Republican officials who believe that their only way to stay in power is to cater to these right-wing, and let's not even say it's on the right wing, these fundamentally flawed conspiracy theories as a way to harness power and to hold on to what they want to see, which is that they want to see certain voters kept out of the process, and they want to rile their voters into a frenzy so that they can use that as a galvanizing force heading into the next election. But the problem is, as I keep saying, when you break democracy for any group, you break it for everyone. And what we are seeing sadly happen in Maricopa County, what's coming to Georgia, is that we're seeing a fracturing among Republicans who understand that while this may win you some immediate result, it is going to harm fundamentally the ability of our nation to conduct democracy fairly.
As you know as well, Stacey, there is a movement among Republicans inside the state of Georgia to separate itself from the insurrection of January 6th, to separate itself from these conspiracy theories, that in fact it was Republicans in that state, Brad Raffensperger and others, who held strong in the face of Donald Trump. Do you see the push and pull inside the Republican Party in Georgia, and who do you see prevailing?
There is a bit of push and pull with Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan disavowing this behavior. Unfortunately, last week, Brad Raffensperger issued a fairly pallid statement, refusing to wholesale reject what has happened, essentially trying to suborn the notion that Fulton County was wrong while taking credit for everything else being right. And the reality is the single largest county voting in our state, either it was done properly or it was not. And for months, he vowed that it had been done properly, and to walk that back in order to hold on to his office in 2022 is deeply disappointing. It's not surprising, but it is disappointing. But my hope is that Republicans watching this play out in Arizona, in Georgia, knowing it's coming to a state near you, people will realize that this is a power grab as opposed to any legitimate attempt to improve access to our democracy. And that is an issue of patriotism. It is not an issue of partisanship.
But how does this get communicated effectively, Stacey, when you look at the numbers that I just read before our interview began about the numbers of Republicans who truly believe that Donald Trump is the true president, that the election was stolen? Why is that happening? And how do we counter that? How does one counter that?
Well, I would say I actually give a great deal of credit to the media for refusing to repeat with this false equanimity the argument that there is some question about the legitimacy of the elections. We have to keep saying this is not true, but we can't keep repeating the people who are posing the lies. One of the most effective ways to combat disinformation is to refuse to repeat it and to instead focus on telling the truth, which is that the voter suppression laws sweeping this country, that the criminalization of our election workers, and now the insurrectionists who are standing for office to run the secretaries of state offices across this country, that this is part of a concerted effort to hold on to power. This is not about a concern about our democracy or voting. It's about holding on to power for a group of people who do not believe that they can win fairly if they have to simply present their ideology to the people.
All right. And while we have you, we want to hear about your new book, While Justice Sleeps. Tell us about it. What inspired you to write it?
I got the idea actually from a dear friend who is a lawyer, Teresa Wynn Roseborough. She mentioned this quirk in the Constitution. The only people who have a lifetime appointment in our Constitution also have no mechanism for removing them for not being able to do their job. And so I wrote a book about a Supreme Court justice who is a swing justice who falls into a coma. And the person who has to figure out what to do to save his life and to save the country is his law clerk, Avery Keene.
Wow. And so where did you got the concept from a friend, but I love this sort of side of you. You have so many different things that you're incredibly talented at. How much did you enjoy writing the book, and do you see more in your future?
I loved writing it. I actually wrote it a decade ago in the midst of a contract that I was writing for romantic suspense novels. This was a book that when it captured my attention, I had to write it. I didn't have a publisher and couldn't find a publisher for almost 10 years. But now that it's out in the world, I am proud that they've actually now ordered 2 new Avery Keene novels.
Amazing. The new novel is While Justice Sleeps. Stacey Abrams, congratulations on the book. And thank you so much for being on the show this morning.
Thank you, Mika. Thank you all.